Hello and welcome to Lunchtime Politics on Channels Television. I'm Millicent Walker. On the news this hour, President Muhammadu Buhari inaugurates Economic Advisory Team, charges Council to stimulate inclusive growth agenda within shortest possible time. The National Assembly begins debate on 2020 draft budget as ministries, departments and agencies race to beat 3 weeks budget defense deadline. And election monitors continue to warn politicians and voters in the forthcoming Kogi and Bayelsa states' November 16 governorship election against misinformation and hate speech as INEC chairman assures of readiness. Welcome everyone to the program. Now, the president has expressed worries that his administration does not have credible and actionable data with which to successfully implement projects. Consequently, he asked the Presidential Economic Advisory Council yesterday at the State House to focus on developing reliable data that reflects the activities in the country.
President Buhari arrives to meet with members of the Economic Advisory Council. Have a listen to the Council's findings and ideas. The President sets the agenda.
As you develop your baseline study, I would like you to focus on primary data collection. Today, most of the statistics quoted about Nigeria are developed abroad by the World Bank, IMF, and other foreign bodies. Some of the statistics we get relating to Nigeria are wild estimates and bear little reflection to the facts on the ground.
President Buhari also believes such credible data is absent in the Northeast.
Today, we hear international organizations claiming to spend hundreds of millions of dollars on IDPs in the Northeast. But when we visit the camps, you rarely see the impact. In 2017, when the National Emergency Management Agency took over the feeding of some IDPs in Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa, the amount we spent was significantly lower than the claims made by these international organizations.
That's not all. He is also unhappy at the country's slow growth rate.
Our reported growth rate is still not fast enough to create the jobs we need to meet our national ambition of collective prosperity. Reason being, we had to trade carefully in view of the mess we inherited. Many of the ideas we developed in the last 4 years were targeted at running Nigeria back to the path of growth.
From the Presidential Villa, Abuja, Ibrahim Adra, Channels Television News.
The Senate and House of Representatives have begun debate on the 2020 appropriation bill, which President Buhari submitted to Parliament Tuesday, October the 8th. While some lawmakers applaud President Buhari for some allocations in the budget, there are also those who express worry over some of the assumptions in the budget and the amount proposed for debt service.
A day after President Muhammadu Buhari submitted the 2020 budget of 10.3 trillion naira to the National Assembly, federal lawmakers are ready for the debate.
Our projection
in the Senate, legislators seem to be uncomfortable with some of the assumptions and expenditure captured in the budget.
Last year, the average production level was 1.8 million barrels per day. Why won't we skip it there? Why must we go up to 2.1 only to be disappointed at the end of the day? Mr. President, I know that you have promised the executive that, oh, you're going to work very well with the executive to produce the budget. But I plead with my colleagues, look at the facts. You can't run away from facts. The facts say that this is not a sustainable budget.
The moment we cannot generate revenue to reflate this economy and get a growth rate of at least about 10% per annum, this country is on the brink. We are always going there on the brink.
The lawmakers were also divided on the increase in value-added tax.
Most of these small business enterprises will be unable, Mr. President, to address this issue of 7.5% VAT. To that extent, we might not necessarily achieve the 2.93% GDP growth that is projected by Mr. President in this budget. That worries me. 7.5% for me is on the high side. I commend the increase in VAT if it is going to be used for the good of the common man, because the VAT is for the rich.
The total sum of...
Meanwhile, in the House of Representatives, just before the commencement of debate on the budget, one lawmaker raises a point of order with the intention to halt the debate, but he is ruled out of order by the Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, the Honourable Minister is yet to provide us with the full details that will enable this budget to be ripe for hearing in line with our rules. Mr. Speaker, I wish to move that we allow these full details to be provided to enable members to have proper facts and figures upon which we can speak to the budget.
Do we debate details? We don't debate details. You are ruled out of order. Section 81 of the Constitution says the President shall cause to be prepared and laid before each House of the National Assembly at any time in each financial year estimates. And that's the operative word.
Then the debate begins.
The only reservation my people have asked me to have about this budget is the fact that the sum allocated for debt servicing, which is 2.4 trillion, is above the sum allocated for capital expenditure, which is about 2.1 trillion.
Now we realize in this country, if you are waiting for government to give you a job, you are wasting your time. It's better for government to provide a platform where jobs can be created.
For lawmakers in both chambers of the National Assembly, the worry seems the same. The country should not be budgeting to spend more than it earns and should be exploring other sources of funding the budget instead of depending largely on oil or borrowing. The debate is expected to continue on the next legislative day. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Well, let's now join the Executive Director, Civil Society Center for Legislative Advocacy, CISLAC, Mr. Awar Rafsanjani, as he weighs in on some of the realities of the budget proposal. Many thanks for joining us from our Abuja studios. Let's quickly ask, the 2020 budget, highest ever, has been generating quite a storm, as you saw there, the floor of the House. What's your take on some of the parameters in the proposal?
Thank you very much. Well, I think, as usual, the 2020 budget doesn't appear to take into consideration the yearning and the aspiration of Nigerian people. Let's look at education. Let's look at health. All the social sector that will help to deal with issues of poverty, inequality, and create a conducive atmosphere for Nigerians to actually benefit from this budget. Apparently, this is not what this budget proposal is talking about. Rather, this budget is based on the basis of borrowing, deficit, and even the capital expenditure. You know, you can see it is just 2 trillion, you know, which means that out of 10 trillion, you know, all the social sector that you are supposed to do in order to deal with issues of poverty, unemployment, you know, and provide healthcare, ensure quality education, these are all missing. Rather, we are taking large chunk of money to pay to do debt servicing, and you know, not only that, you have a large amount of money to, you know, budgeted for power, which I don't understand. You have privatized power why are you injecting so much money? You are subsidizing for already the rich people and the multinational companies, rather than subsidizing for the poor. So I now understand how this budget intends to deal with issues of poverty, inequality, and create even the job that we are talking about.
Sanjani,
rather, you are going to inject huge amount of money, into power sector, which you have already privatized. So I don't understand why you have already privatized something and then you are injecting money, for already the people who are, benefiting. So I think the only option we have is to ensure that all the frivolous and dubious budgetary allocation in the proposal is actually expunged by the National Assembly. Secondly, the National Assembly should not be in a rush just to say that this budget is okay. Like I've read, some of the comments by some of the members saying that the budget, is okay. I think if they do that, they will mortgage the trust by the Nigerian people. And even the president will not be, I don't think the president will be happy for them just to take everything that has been submitted. I think their responsibility is to ensure that they scrutinize this budget, eliminate duplication, frivolous hate, and so many things. For example, you will see that every year, agencies will be buying cars, computers, and so many things. And where are the other ones they bought last year? You ask yourself. So I think it is important that the National Assembly take time to look at this budget, do everything that they could to ensure that this budget meets the aspiration of Nigerian people. Otherwise, this budget, as far as I'm concerned, it will just be like the same ritual budget that we do. Pay huge amounts of money for debt servicing, spend less on capital expenditure, which will have helped to talk about issues of creating jobs.
I must cut in here, Mr. Rafsanjani, to quickly ask you, the president admitted that the growth rate isn't fast enough, says because we have to tread carefully in view of the mess that was inherited. Now, many of the ideas were, he said also, many of the ideas were targeted to take us back to the path of growth. Now, are you optimistic on the Economic Advisory Council and the baseline study expectations, primarily data collection? If you were to advise them, what would you be asking them to do first?
I have no doubt the team that has been constituted by the president, they are competent, they know what this economy is, and they know how to prepare solution. If only the president will give them, opportunity to give him the necessary advice and also take their advice as, something that, would be backed up by policy implementation. The only challenge that I have now is already president was dismissing some data, which we don't even have a homegrown, reliable, data, and other partners of Nigeria are helping to, work with the Nigerian government to generate this data. And the president, somebody told him to dismiss those things when you did not even have alternative. You did not even have the manpower to even generate this. You did not have any plan on the ground. You are dismissing, already a data that is very, reliable, that is already, been even endorsed by the government agency. So I think what I expect the government to do is to build a credible, responsible national institution with enabling resources and manpower that will generate and compute with whatever foreign data that we've gotten. If all the data were very positive, I don't think the president would dismiss it. We need to admit that we have some fundamental problems in the country. If only we are interested, rather than just dismissing what comes out, from every other places. I think it is important that we pay attention to developing our own national, database, bank, with reliable, credible, information that will not be in any doubt. If we do that, then I would have said, okay, we can dismiss whatever that comes out. But in the absence of having our own reliable, credible, information, or data collection, then we will have to fall back with those, organizations that are already working with the Nigerian government to create this data.
We appreciate your time, Mr. Al Rafsanjani, Executive Director, CISLAC. We'd like to thank you for joining us at this time. Let's take a break. When we return, we'll be looking at the build-up to the Kogi-Bayelsa November 16th governorship elections. Join us again.